Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. It's 7:02 by my watch, and the first order of business is to adopt the agenda. May I have a motion and a second? Discussion.
A couple of extra grounds for closing the meeting.
Yep.
91A,
Remind us what A is.
personal information.
Identifiable information.
Individuals
Yeah.
serving on committees and other capacities.
Yeah.
And F, enforcement, law enforcement.
F. Enforcement. Okay. Personnel. Okay, so with those adds, any more? This is for the regular meeting agenda. Okay, already? All in favor? And opposed? That carries. Public participation is none. We have one delegation, Cambiza Zorigan. Welcome. Start the clock there. The typical way that we handle things is we receive the delegation, we don't comment or make any promises. So with that in mind, look forward to hearing your comments.
I would like to give you, each one of you one of this. We already have it. You have it? You have it?
Yep. Yeah.
I made a copy also.
Yeah, everybody's got
Myself,
one.
I may give you one for the record. You do have it.
Yeah.
So that's what I try to do.
Sorry, we already have one.
I'm very organized.
Yeah.
I didn't want to waste the money from here. By the way, when I want to come over here, my wife said that, why you are wasting your time? I said, I'm not wasting my time. Because when you are faced with the people that they have integrity and they have a wisdom, you never waste your time. Did you read the letter that you have it in front of you right now? Everybody knows what's in there?
I've certainly read it myself, yeah.
Because I can wait to read it if you like, otherwise. By the way, and I told her because I had a meeting one-on-one with Mayor, and I find out that he's very positive and want to try to do something right and help us with this matter. We can change the name of the parking lot to the party lot. Because in the summer, all the punks and all the teenagers that they don't go by the rules, they are coming over there for party. And I wish you never faced with this matter. Because right now, everybody, I'm sure that all of you, you are happy that we are going to have a summertime, but we are not happy about that. Because on that time, we cannot open our windows, and we cannot sleep even though, because all the time there is a noise. I mentioned a few solutions for this matter, as in my opinion, and I don't know which one you want to go with that, but very simple one is not to waste the money as we did it in the last 12 years and nothing happened. Put a few concrete barriers, that's it. A parking lot will be closed, and because on the street we have a parking place, it says just for only residents. The resident can park over there and go to the beach. But this parking lot is so attractive for the people that are coming here and never go anywhere. I mentioned everything that I have, it came to my mind, but every day we are going to see that we have to go and collect the junk and everything that, garbage. They put it there. They are not, they never behave. They are not civilized people. They just drop it and they go. It's not good that we can see all the time the garbage in front of your house. Another solution, if you want to spend money, at the corner of the parking lot, at the end, you can have it for example, the divers, and the others will be for residents, and we are not obligated to pay from the taxpayers' money to waste it for the junk and punk people that they are coming over there. We are not obligated to just provide the parking lot. We are obligated that, but there is a beach, they can go to the beach however they want to go. But this is very bad, and I need really your consideration, and also if you want to do something, I'm telling you one or two sentences just for your conscience. Sleep with that and then think about it. A father, husband, and a human. One human, if will hurt, I believe that it's more like as many others. This is not the difference between one. If one person will hurt, it seems that the other people hurt. Because in my culture, which is the oldest culture in the world, 3,700 years ago, one of the poets that this poet also is in the United Nations. It says that if one part of the body will be hurt, the other parts never exist. Just they will hurt. Also, they will hurt. It means if we as a family, doesn't matter one or two or three people, if we are going to be hurt, you are the other part of the body as a human that you should be hurt. But you are sleeping at home and we are suffering nothing, suffering not to sleep. The last word that I would like to, maybe you keep it in your mind and sleeping with that is, do you want to support the punks and unbehaved teenagers, or you want to waste money for rules and bylaws that didn't work, never, ever? I'm paying the tax in here, and I need to rest. That's very simple. I want to rest. I want to open the windows. What should I do? I need an answer. This is very important. How can I open the windows? I wish that all the time there would be a snow and rain and no one came over here. Against of your wish. Because all the Canadian loves sun. I'm Canadian, but I don't like sun. Because sun means disaster for me. Sleep with that. Please, you want to waste your time, the money of the taxpayers for the junk and punk people that they are coming from Vancouver, or you want to keep us safe? I'm sorry that you turned it over. Anybody write this was all of you actually, very intelligent, but this is not exist, at least for us. This is not exist. And this should be on the top of everything, because if you cannot live, why you need a stability? Why you need a good environment, good government? Why you need any to be as a volunteer? You have to exist first. I told my daughter that the first thing in your life is you will be healthy, because if you are not healthy, you cannot study, you cannot marry, you cannot do anything. And in this regard, I'm telling you, if we cannot sleep, you can't do anything else. We want water for what? For our life, for living, for drinking. But if we cannot sleep all the time. 3 months in summer, and actually more than 3 months maybe, and also in this spring break. I spoke with Carl, and I'm very happy that he's positive to help and solve this problem. Are you gonna do something? One of the family that is part of this community, and all of us are like as a one body, cannot resist and exist because of the problems. Do something, please. I don't want to come over here anymore because I have to trust you. Thank you.
Thanks, Cambies. Although we don't typically comment, I will say we hear you. And we are doing something about it. And we will actually be hearing, I believe, in the budget section of tonight's meeting, what the parking plans are for this, some of the parking plans are for this.
And you are not gonna, you don't have any parking meter anymore. Because it doesn't.
I'm not saying you're going to like them, but we're doing something about it.
It's not that I like it. I like it that I can sleep and open the windows. Do something for me.
Okay. Thanks very much for your comments.
Thank you.
And with that, we'll move on to review of prior minutes. First and only one being on page 7. Can I have a motion to approve these minutes? And a second? Errors and omissions? I had one, I believe. And it was only a... Oh no, I had two. In the public questions and comments section, section 13 on page 15, the comments by Mr. Stone. Mr. Stone queried whether the garbage pays for garbage pickup. Is that what he said? I don't think he... I mean, obviously we pay for garbage pickup.
Whether the village pays for garbage pickup.
Thank you and goodbye, everybody.
Good night.
Still, we have someone with a truck that coming over there and stay there for a few days. Do something.
Okay, so what was that about? Do you remember, Peter? Because he wouldn't ask whether the village pays for garbage pickup.
He did, I think.
He must have, because...
I think what he meant was, do we do it ourselves? I think what he meant was outsource, but that is what he said. Does the village pay for garbage pickup?
Oh, well, maybe we should change that to contract for garbage pickup then.
Okay.
Yeah?
He did ask if the village paid for it.
Yeah, okay.
That's probably
okay, that's all coming back to me now. Okay, fine. And then the only other one...
So,
we're changing the word pays to contract. And the other one was on the next page, under the when the meeting was closed, that the meeting be recessed. That's just in the wrong place.
yeah, that should be enclosed.
Yeah, that's right, because we did recess.
Yeah, as soon as we closed the meeting, I said, "Can we take a short recess?"
Yes. Okay, so it's in the wrong place. Okay, good. Okay. Okay.
I remember that. I thought I had deleted that. So.
Oh, fine. Okay. Okay. Anything else?
This one here, I've read this over and over and over, and I'm sure it's me not getting it, but I'm going to page 874 under public delegation request policy. Said, Mr. Kubik has seen volunteer efforts diminished by the amount of work it is to maintain this trail. I take it what he was trying to say is too much work and the volunteers are losing interest. Is that what it means, or?
Yeah, I think so.
I think his message was there's more work than we can cover with volunteers. That was, I think, the point. Does that say that? No, it doesn't.
No, I think he was saying that the volunteers. I've got the notes right here. Just a sec. My notes, anyways. Some of them. Don't have that.
Well, maybe as you go through it, just to do these other amends, you can just clear that up. Just re-listen to the tape.
It's an odd sentence.
It is, yeah, it's just a little convoluted.
Okay. Yeah, it's not a big deal. It's
Yeah.
just puzzling.
Well, let's just decide what it should be.
Yeah, I typed out his delegation word for word.
Oh, okay, so that's not what he...
Yeah, but I edited it after that, so I may have abrogated something.
You should de-edit.
Maybe I did it a little too quickly or something.
Well, why don't we,
The volunteer efforts diminish over the years due to the amount of work it is to maintain the trail.
So volunteer efforts dwarfed by the scope of maintenance on trails is what I have in mind.
that's what I heard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So this has seen volunteer efforts dwarfed.
yeah.
Good word.
You know,
Read the rest of that.
that little book
Sorry?
contains a bunch of good stuff.
Dwarfed
Bye.
by the amount of work it is to maintain the trail.
Dwarfed by the scope of maintenance on trails.
It's our
Right.
living scribe over here.
Yeah. Well, in fact, we could. That's fine as well, but we could actually just replace the word diminished with dwarfed, and it would say the same thing. But yeah, I like that even better.
Okay.
Okay, good.
No one would ever accuse you of minutia.
So are we, sorry, is it what Nye said?
Yes,
Yeah.
what I said.
Mr. Kubik has seen volunteer efforts dwarfed by the scope of maintenance on the trail.
Yeah, I mean, in particular, where we have verbal presentations, I'd like the minutes to be fairly accurate because that's the only point of reference we have in 5 years' time when we go back to remember, especially for something that's sort of policy impacting like this. So that was a good catch. Okay, in that vein, perhaps I will just comment on the one above, and that's Mr. Stone expressed concern of residents being adversely affected by the radio waves off the cell towers. I suppose that's all cell towers rather than the
Should
cell
be
towers.
From the cell towers.
Okay, fine, yeah.
Sorry, which line is that?
Second line, from the cell towers.
Top of the page 8.
And then that continuation there, and that as there is no longer one small tower, but literally thousands of them all over the country, that there's no verb there, and also there never was one small tower. So what was that about?
That's what he had said.
I think he's saying basically we've gone past technologically the age when cell phone reception relied on giant towers in a few locations to repeaters everywhere, including all over buildings and people's private residences.
Okay, well then there should be one large tower. But I don't remember if that's what he said.
No, he said it like this.
He did say it like that.
Yeah.
Fine. Okay, then we leave
So,
it just like it is.
I think we just have, I'm just interpreting.
It's
what he
almost
wrote.
verbatim.
Yeah.
Yeah, fine. Okay. So, and what we are looking for is a verbatim record, not an interpreted record. Okay, so anything further, change-wise? Peter, you're, well, seeing as you wrote them, of course this is your version. Okay, so I'll call the question on that one. Approval of the minutes, all in favour? Opposed, and that carries. Okay. Business arising, I believe there's none. Speak now.
It's either this or unfinished business, Mayor Burr, and this is just a question for Peter, because I thought he gave us the answer, but maybe I dreamed he did. It's on the page 9 of 74, the bottom, about the secondary suite surcharge bylaw. When we were referencing, could it be reopened again? And you advised no, but I thought you said it could be reopened in 6 months or so, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll calendarize that. One or more members of council will do that. And okay, good. So are you satisfied with that that response?
Just, whether I dreamed it or you said it, it's fine.
No, I think you're right. So we could potentially. Okay, we've approved the minutes as is.
Okay.
Okay, so good. We'll move on to unfinished business. There's none, so we'll go to. Oh,
The delegation on the planned work on the trails, you and the CAO for the terms of reference for the committee that is to be struck.
we've done nothing.
I'm happy just keeping it off the unfinished business that we sometimes itemize.
Yeah, that should
You're on your own
that should be an
timeframe.
action item. Peter, do you have it?
It's page 8 of 74,
Yeah.
dead center.
That was something else we didn't have on our discussion. Let me put that down. Terms of reference for House Sound Trail. What is this thing called? Lions Trail.
Just loaded McLaughlin Rosen's today.
Yeah, that's good. We need people to catch this stuff. Yeah, okay, good. Good one. So that would be matters arising, actually, so just keep it in there. Okay, so any further matters arising, Ron?
Nope,
No,
good.
good. There's no unfinished business, so we're going straight to reports. The first being the supplemental budget reports on page 19. Pam, take it away.
So I took the budget, the last budget we looked at, and on the supplemental items, I removed the items that council had indicated they would consider not including in this budget. And I actually, just so we could remember what they were, I put them on the bottom of the supplemental. And you may have noticed that the actual surplus has been reduced a bit because we were still working on the budget. So the main things that we adjusted, it was the environmental liability insurance. I had it in for 1 year, but hadn't realized it was actually a 3-year term. So I had to increase the budget for the environmental liability for $11,247. And another one was dangerous and municipal trees. We have a budget for that every year, but we will be removing the tree, I believe, at the Lions Bay Beach Park, and that was actually, the quote for that was the entire budget. So we felt we should add another $3,000 to that budget, it is a budget that we don't spend a lot, but we do have trees usually every year that we need to remove. There was some payroll things done, and that was sort of the bulk of it. And then just some increases to the Sea to Sky charges. When we actually got the quote for this year, there was just, for some software, there was some increases to the operating costs for that. So it went from $154,000 down to about $138,000. There were some increases too. We adjusted, I had the municipal grants in at the full request, so of course we lowered the grant for the house concerts, so there was something there, but then we also had to increase the Arts Council by $2,000 for the banners that they're going to purchase.
In terms of cash?
Yeah, in terms of cash.
Yeah.
So that was the adjusted surplus, but I think I've gone through the budget and we reviewed it, and I'm pretty comfortable now that that's pretty much it.
Triple final.
That's the double
Well,
final
yes and no.
anyway.
I've got 3 items I want to talk about right now.
No, in
but-
terms of
On
just
the
what we're
revenues
starting
piece.
with. No, I'm talking just in terms of the cash.
Oh, the
surplus we're
revenue, sorry,
starting with.
okay,
Oh,
yeah.
no, the work we have now is just, again, determining if you still want 0%, if you wanted a different percent, and if you do want 0, then we do have to cut about $40,000
Where do we see that number?
from the budget. So the 188 is where we're at now.
And that needs
And
to
then-
balance with what?
The
With 137.
137,971.
Yeah, okay.
And then just as a reminder to council, I didn't want to remove things and then have us trying to remember
No,
what we
exactly.
removed. So,
For your math, it's 52 grand.
that's right.
Okay.
Get your knife out.
So the revenue, these revenue numbers we see here reflect the parking meters section on page 23, a revenue of 19,650.
Well, what I've done at this point is, since it was sort of an in and an out, the net P&L effect to the
okay,
budget would be
okay.
25,000. But that's a good point. When, depending on what council agrees, I do have fine tuning. I have to go back into the budget to put revenue in, but that's a direct impact on the bottom line.
Sure,
It's
yeah, so that
25,000.
25.5 is in here somewhere.
Yeah, I've now, that was
Net.
one of the bigger changes, is the 25 there at the bottom.
Yeah, okay.
So basically, these other 2 pages were just a breakdown. The office renovation, I amended that from the last time. We pulled out the wheelchair accessibility. We had previously had that included in council chambers moving up, but Peter and I had talked about it in NI, and we felt that it should be wheelchair accessible no matter what, even if you don't move up there, because people are using those meeting rooms. So
Absolutely,
that's
yeah.
why that got removed, and a lot of that work would just be done by Public Works. And then I just wanted to show sort of what the rejig numbers were, so we still have moving council chambers upstairs, just doing some minor changes to the village office. And the fireproof safe, I know it does look expensive, but we do need it. I have actually reduced the budget quite a bit for reinforcing the office floor, but that's the big expense. The safes themselves are quite expensive, but we can't have the safe unless we reinforce the floor.
And there's nowhere to put it where reinforcement's not needed.
I think pretty much anywhere in this office we put it would
Yeah.
require reinforcement.
Yeah. Yeah,
The
no.
plan is to put it in the CAO's office.
Okay. Yeah, well, we talked about that, and we all understand this. There's no choice there.
So I guess the next thing for council is just to think again about the tax increase you would like and what we have to do to get there.
So is the number still something like 1% tax increase gives us about $11,000?
No, it's more. It gives us 14,600.
Based on the current tax
Yes,
assessment
exactly.
base. Yeah, okay.
3.6 is the number to balance.
$14,536.
14,500 and something, okay, per point.
Yeah. So for the 52 shortfall, as it sits on the table, it's 3.6.
Okay, well, I'll just inject into discussion right now, there being no better time. I already sent a note around to council saying that I think we should consider one more shovel-ready plan, just as we did for the shovel-ready plan that we are now considering using for phase 2 of the Clean Water Wastewater Fund. We need another shovel-ready plan on the shelf for the next fund, which will happen before we have time to fund another plan, if you understand my timing logic there. So
If I may.
yeah, sure, go ahead.
We have two projects that are ready for funding, that are ready to go out for grant applications.
Right, and those
The
are?
PRVs and the Bayview Water Project, or the Bayview Drip plus water.
Yep.
So that's two grant funding ready to go.
Yeah.
What we need to do is we need to review the infrastructure master plan list of projects for the project scopes beyond the 2019 window for design.
Right, but that would have to be funded this year in order to keep on some sort of project a year type of timeline, assuming grant funding, which looks like, so I mean, some of them, I suggested some of them, I don't know what the priorities are out of the IMP, and you would need to guide us there, but I mean, for example, the Ocean View Drainage Project. Yeah.
I think what Nye was saying is that we've got two, so we've got one for this year, one for next year. And so we would
You
have
wouldn't do
next
that. You
year's
wouldn't do those
budget.
simultaneously.
Well, I mean, it's strategic decision-making on your part, on council's part, what they'd like to put in.
How would the PRVs be funded?
Well, clean water, wastewater.
Oh.
So if we wanted to submit two projects, those would be the two projects. If Bayview was a priority, I would recommend that we just submit the one project, which is Bayview.
As
which
being
leaves-
then more likely to get.
Absolutely, which then leaves the PRVs as another project.
But the PRVs is a vendor-led project, right? Or is there design to be done there? Oh no, we've already done all the design.
The design is being done and will be done by AECom as part of this project. So we'll have standard details for PRVs, including SCADA, ready to go.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I hadn't appreciated that, so that's good. That's good news. What I'm talking about is a $40,000 spend,
I would
minus a potential infrastructure planning grant.
Yeah, I would add that the next two projects off the top of my head, the Upper Bayview water main, which is an AC water main, and then we would have to factor in the design of the roads. That's a significant design job.
Yeah.
The project itself, I believe, is close to 2.5. Design work would be about 10% of that, 15%. So,
Yeah, because we've got a whole bunch of abandoned lines up there.
and Ocean View needs to be done in segments, and we need to look at not just the water, but also, or not just the road and drainage, but we should also look at the water main to see if there's any water main that needs. So there's a bit of coordination work, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I mean, these, to me, all sound like designs that need to be started at some point. Okay, so just bear that in mind. I'm not asking for any particular decision, unless anybody has comments on that one. We are talking about a $40,000 rough ballpark.
Actually, I think what Nye was saying is Bayview alone would be a $250,000 or more design job. Am I correct?
Yeah, 10%.
10 to 15% of a $2.5 million project.
But how would we ever fund that? Unless
Hopefully grant funding opportunities will follow along like we've been told they will with the clean water wastewater, and that you will be able to include the design work.
with design costs included.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just a waiting game to see.
Okay, so I'll just say the other two I had in mind. That was an added bylaw enforcement resource. Some of this was part and parcel of the delegation we just saw. Some of it is part of the parking plan that's in your head, or in our joint heads. So there's that.
Do you have a number in mind?
Well, I'm thinking essentially an extra day per week,
For 4 months?
whatever the current period is.
Okay.
Yeah. So, off the top of your head, can you think of what that number might entail? It's really what we have now, a quarter of what we have now, right? Or a third extra.
3 days, yeah.
16
Quarter.
weeks, 16 days times.
So
Yeah, if you, and
30,
we,
Pardon?
say 34.
So,
34 an hour.
with,
Times 34 times how many hours a day?
8.
what actually they've been doing, yeah, 8, sorry. The two of them do a 12 hour shift.
43.50, so let's call it 5.
5,000 extra.
so our budget last year was about 36, I think, and we only spent 24 because one of the bylaw enforcement officers wasn't available all the time that we had budgeted for. However, prior to that, it had been tried to have somebody for a Thursday, which an added day, was it the Thursday?
It was, yeah.
And the results of that were that it was not worthwhile to do that.
So what are we budgeted for now in terms of coverage? From what time to what time?
Oh, we're budgeted on Friday for 8 hours. I think they come in at 3 and go to 2:30, go to about 10.
Mhm.
And then what we started last year, which we've never done before, is sort of the joint shift. So they started 10 in the morning and go to about,
The summer before last, we had
and
them
they
for
until
that.
like 11 o'clock. So they
Yeah.
do sort of do 2 8-hour shifts, but they overlap for half an hour.
Yeah, so
to an hour.
yeah.
And we do that Saturday, Sunday, and stat holidays. What Peter had said, we did find during the week that there just is no traffic. That we really do tend to be a weekend community, even in the summer. And
Although I
no
must
tickets
say,
available.
I also, I mean, you know, we are talking about paid parking. Paid parking only works if it's enforced. Otherwise, people soon know they don't have to buy a ticket on the Wednesday. And I've, as proof, I sent you pictures of parking lot full on weekdays, but unenforced.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no, we're not
No, we're not-
contesting
yeah,
that
no, no,
there are
we
that
just-
there are people who contravene our bylaws during the week, and we have no one around to
Enforce them.
enforce.
But the bang for the buck is not worth the buck.
well, that was
We found that at the
what I
time,
understand
that we
was
didn't have
the-
paid parking then,
was
but
before my time.
yeah, it was not a whole lot to do, just a lot of kind of driving around and
Okay, so maybe what I'm actually thinking is not so much an added shift, but late night coverage to do something which Peter and I will have to talk about as part of the parking plan. But for example, closing the Carlton Grove lot at 11 by pulling a chain across, and then being back again by 10 the next morning to take the chain away.
so
With all the stuff, now what if there's a car in there? Now what do you do, type thing?
as well. I think our park hours are 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. So we don't have anybody that would be there at 8 a.m. on a Saturday or Sunday to open that up.
Well, so I'm saying, should we? Because
You can change the park hours to 10 a.m. I guess. Have somebody there at 10 a.m. by law.
okay,
Pretty
these are all things that we.
It's a pretty cool summer job.
And in fact, we could just get a local kid to come and pull the chain. Is that a union job
Find out about an automated gate.
or a gate?
I think the vandalism aspect of having any kind of gate or chain has to be considered, and I would expect that we would see high incidence of vandalism of whatever type of gate or chain might be implemented, if one is implemented. So we'd have to be prepared to constantly replace chains and locks,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Well, chains are cheap. So I guess we're not talking about the parking provisions right now. We're talking about, do we need extra time? And I'm hearing probably not. We'll be okay.
we did find increasing the hours, sorry,
It's
to
a
cover that
yin-
shift.
It's a yin and yang here. I mean, our administration is talking history and what's happened in the past. You're talking about something that's different. And just using Camby's as a practical example. And I mean, I just threw it out there. I mean, it's a cool summer gig for a 19-year-old to, lock it at 10, open it at 8.
Empty
Well,
the
I don't think-
garbage.
Well, yeah. The contractor thing, I mean, gee, I'd do that when I was 19 for $5,000.
I'll do that
So-
now for $5,000.
So I would have to caution that I don't think it's a simple case of having a
We
teenager.
simplify- This is a
lock it
parking
up
plan
and-
issue.
We're talking about locking somebody's car in a lot while they're at the other end of the lot drinking and partying, if that's what they're doing. And
But-
we're not gonna put somebody's kid in that position, so.
Gosh, even the bylaw
so-
officers, it would be
Yeah, the bylaw
challenging.
officers themselves were already intimidated by some of that. So we
Well,
need
but
to-
that's terms of referencing that we really that the police must be
it's a
called.
police thing, and so it's a case of people calling the police, whether it's bylaw calling the police, whether it's Mr. Zordigan or other neighbors calling the police. Almost all of the things he mentions in his delegation materials are matters that are police enforcement. They're not bylaw enforcement, and they're certainly not private citizen enforcement.
No, so I mean, those are all things that the bylaw officers must understand in the terms of reference when to call the police and when not. We pay $140,000 a year for policing. Let's get some policing. So that's again a separate issue. So yes or no to more budget for BEO?
Well, I think last year when we extended the hours and had them work sort of the 2 8-hour shifts on those 3 days combined, that it was effective. Like I say, last year, unfortunately, the bylaw officer wasn't able to do it on the Sunday. But if
Yes, we didn't actually have the
notice it.
coverage that we'd even contracted for. So let's at least try to get that. So, but that's just a case of choosing the right individual. That's not a budget
But
issue.
we did find that there was quite a difference between having the 2 bylaw officers sharing it versus the
Or
one,
committee
which
like
we
this
had my
would go.
first year.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm good. So we don't need to do anything there. So back to the parking plan revenue. There's a very precise numbers for to the nearest dollar, but I
Well-
think that's because you just divided them up.
It was because I just took them from the parking report that
Yeah.
CAO had done,
Okay.
and 50% of the revenue came from Lions Bay Beach Park, 45 from Kelvin Grove, and 55 from Sunset. So it was just the reason I did that, just to look at different options, so you can see the Lions Bay Beach revenue against the Lions Bay Beach costs.
Yeah.
Because
No, that's a good presentation.
another alternative could be just meters at Kelvin Grove or Sunset. I mean, there's different options. So I wanted you to see the revenue.
Well, so let's
come
talk
through
about that
those two.
expenditure item because that's a big new piece. So Peter, how confident are you that CN is going to require $19,000?
I have no idea. I've reached out to CN to request a meeting to discuss these things. I haven't heard back yet.
So that would be
that
contingency.
That figure is a figure that was in emails back and forth before my time.
Yeah, we certainly won't volunteer that number again. That was mentioned by a guy who's long gone, who didn't actually understand the point. And the
Well,
current
he's-
rent is 1,000, right?
He's still there.
Yes.
The other person's gone, but the finance guy, Corey Bitts, I think is his name, is still there. His
Worse
email
luck.
didn't bounce back.
Okay.
But no, there's definitely bases upon which we can argue for a much more reasonable rent, and I laid out some of those for him in my email. So I will follow up with that. It's just that number's there because that's the last thing they said to us.
That's the
So-
contingency, yeah, okay, fine. Okay, paving sounds about right, line painting fencing sounds about right.
Sorry, I just want to ask a question, Pam. I'm just looking at the revenue numbers, and does that take into account the
The
cost
cost
of
of,
the
yes, it
rental
does, yeah.
cost of the
It was
equipment?
about $4,800, so
Right, okay.
yes.
So that's net.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Net of credit card charges and net of meter.
Translink tax, net of all the
Okay.
numerous charges and
Translink
Yeah, I
tax
knew,
going
I knew
up,
it
by
was
the way.
net of those things.
Yeah.
I just couldn't
No,
remember
it
if
did,
it was net
and I
of
went
the-
back and double checked,
the leasing
because it is
cost.
about, it's close to $5,000, so I wanted to make sure we'd
Okay.
taken it out.
This fine revenue, did you account for any increase in fine revenue? Parking ticket revenue?
I basically kept it what it's been the last few years. There's been kind of some ups and downs, but I just sort of took an average of,
The point being that I contend, as you know, that we missed a huge slew of people who should have received tickets, and they just didn't. Bylaw officer was on, 29 cars in violation, no tickets.
But
So-
then we also get correspondence from residents, for example, the one from the Brunswick Beach person the other day who commented what a great job they did and they didn't have any more on-street parking issues in Brunswick Beach.
Yeah.
She was quite happy. So it's,
Yeah, I contend there is more revenue to be derived from parking tickets, but I'm fine with leaving it out and seeing what happens rather than budgeting for it. Okay, so why are the fees going up so much? Going up $40,000?
sorry, I didn't bring all the detail. With me.
Would that be building permit
Oh, you're
type
sorry, you're just
stuff?
looking at the fees and licenses. It's building permit, but it's also the temporary use permits. It's sort of the
Yeah, okay.
additional revenue. I actually lowered the building, actually, I kept the building permit budget. I did raise it a bit because we ended up being almost $40,000 favorable, but building permit revenue is challenging because
Yeah.
you don't know if it's just a flash in the pan. So it's a combination of building permit revenue plus some additional revenue from temporary use permits and things, but I was conservative with that because it's a real unknown, and some development permits
Some
and
development permits as well,
and some
yeah.
other things like that. And because it's the first year, I definitely put it in, but I erred on being a little bit conservative. Close to the numbers we had discussed, I think, a few meetings ago.
Okay, I also see that the server has gone from 6,000 to 14,908.
It was never 6,
It was
8.
it was 8, and then I adjusted it to 9 at the last meeting. So it was backup software and the
Yeah, so basically it's the server and it's the backup software. For our
Backup
entire-
software costs $25,
it was and licenses, Microsoft licenses. And,
but we have the licenses. We're moving them from one server to another.
No, we have to upgrade software.
Oh, it's an upgrade.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was the key word I was missing. It's
Okay.
the upgraded backup software.
Yeah.
Yes.
Everything
Yeah.
has to be, so if you change the server, you have to change the backup software. The server, the operating system is 5 years old and isn't covered under warranty anymore, so it all has to be changed. It's part of the network servicing agreement package we have with Sea to Sky.
That is a very ninja box, $15,000 server. I'm sure the technical spec has been set by the IT department, but what is it, gold plated?
It's the standard server. I've seen it before. It's what we used in West Van, or what West Van uses. It's a pretty high-end machine.
Yeah, did that cost $15,000?
I believe there were about 11 or 12 back in 2014, 2013.
Right, $15,000 to run a 15-person office. I mean, it's just it's outrageous.
But the volume of paperwork and the file storage, the space that we use is pretty intense.
I also added an additional desktop computer. It reminded me with the 5 years, all of our computers are coming to the end of their life. So we're going to replace one for sure because it literally doesn't have much life left. But I thought it would be prudent to put another one in. We'll only spend it if one fails, but chances are one of these.
Well, that's a price I
desktops
can
is
live
gonna-
with. 1,500
Yeah.
each. Yeah, sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds right there. But 100 times the price for a server?
Yeah, it's a
Oh,
high-end
10 times.
machine.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else that we haven't
So
seen
that
here
goes out
before?
for bid, doesn't it, Nine?
Sorry?
That's a tender thing, isn't it?
No, it's Sea to Sky is
Okay.
our network provider, so we have to use the machines that they use.
Okay.
Well, I mean, they have a markup, which is fine. I mean, you look at this 3,000 for a desktop, that 1,500 each. Yeah, I mean, a desktop's about $800, a good one. So their markup's 100%. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's retail. But man alive, I can pull up the same Dell server that they are going to specify on Dell.ca, and it's going to be $3,800. Not the software, mind you,
Yeah.
but I'm sure that is the price. It's just, do we want to spend it? And the answer is we have to. Yeah. Okay.
Well, this kind of begs the question, is do we have the right IT people running for us? Or should we be looking for somewhere else? Are they too expensive for us?
Good point.
Don't know.
Do you have an opinion off the top of your heads?
I don't know what, if we're in an agreement, or if there's an agreement with Sea to Sky with a fixed time frame, or...
Not 100% off the top of my head either. I do know that I was contacted by my former employers at the SLRD who were not happy with how things were going there. So that was sort of one that I thought was perhaps a viable alternative. But yeah, I don't know that it's...
A different vendor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the grass isn't necessarily greener.
Yeah.
Sea to Sky, sorry.
No, go ahead.
One of Sea to Sky's strength is we have their Maze software for our accounting, and they really have a high level of knowledge around Maze, and they have a very good relationship with Temple.
They're a reseller, a value-added reseller for Maze.
No, I just meant we get our software from Maze, and when we have issues with it, we have to call Sea to Sky. They work very well with Maze, and the two of them often work things out. Like they have an expertise in the Maze software, which we really appreciate because it's probably one of our biggest things with our computers. Our entire accounting system is run on Maze software.
Yeah. I've been, when my emails gone on the fritz, they've been very responsive. They have solved the problem every time. Yeah, maybe they are a little expensive, but I don't think you're gonna.
I think, Carl, the issue is, they live with the 15 or you don't, and there's no secondary choices.
Yeah. So that's a number that's changed. Are there any other numbers that we haven't seen before here?
No, there was the parking meter was the big one. Everything else is referenced down below. Adding the additional desktop, the computer server went up, and the parking meters, because that had been to be determined otherwise.
That's buying
And
the
then
parking
all-
meters or leasing?
The
No,
leasing
sorry,
cost
the-
is only 5,000. So with respect to the parking costs, the nice to haves are the paving and the line painting. I believe that we're going to have to address the amount we pay issue because we've opened that door, and the fencing issue, which we should have covered off a long time ago. So I think regardless of what happens, you could kill the whole parking meter plan and still have to pay for fencing and perhaps a higher CN rent. I don't know.
I think my question for the two of you, as the parking plan rattles around in the jar, is that it's 25 grand today we were spending, and we're in, let's call it the 1st of March. So, I mean, this is a strong project of Mayor Burr's. It's something that council has endorsed. There's been lots of other things that are going on, but the time to dance is fairly coming to an end here. So I guess I'm going to ask the two of you, is this something that stays or goes? Because I would hate to see that it stays, and for a variety of reasons, the number gets increased, we can't implement, CN doesn't want to play ball, the whole 9 yards.
Well,
And
those are valid questions.
Councillor Bain, I can't answer that.
Mm.
So, I mean, for me, I'd go on good faith if the two of you are united on this.
Yeah, well, I mean, I take your comments on the timeline very much to heart, and Peter is tired of getting my emails in that regard. But I will say that this is the worst case scenario number because of the $19,000. I will kick up. In fact, I would go so far as to say, if they want $19,000, we would certainly not do the paving. The fencing is certainly not called for in our lease, but maybe we have to now.
It is called for
It
a
is.
lease.
Yeah.
I think the lease calls for a fence down the middle, down
15 feet from the tracks.
Yeah, but all sides of their lot. Well, as I don't need to point out to you, that the parking lot that we have is half owned by CN and half by Flinro, so I'm sure they don't want a fence down the middle of the lot. But okay, so we'll interpret that to mean just along the railway line. Yeah, you're right, it does say fence. So we've just never done it. And that would include some new highway barriers, so with the ones that hold the saddles for the fence.
No, the fencing estimate is for in the ground posts, not on the barriers.
Well, don't forget, we've got barriers for the asking there, and I'm pointing at the pit.
Yeah.
It's been asked.
Yeah.
Waiting for the answer.
Okay, because a half-height fence with half-height poles is going to be cheaper than a full one. But
Yeah.
the 11,000 is not a huge amount of money.
Yeah, we had to budget what CN has asked for in other areas for their fencing.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, fair enough.
Well, the other point about this is that it's a project that's been going on for quite a while in the planning. But I look at under the Lions Bay Beach costs, the first three items are a 1 year only deal. Once it's done, it's done. And then the cost of the parking meter whole plan becomes a lot more reasonable. Not to say that the rent for the lot is acceptable, but if we're going to go ahead on it, it just hits us this year and not for another 5-10 years, I suspect. So it's not such a bad deal.
Well, that's the counter to, it doesn't get implemented until September 2018. Doesn't feel any better.
Or the alternative is you scrap the paving and the line painting for this year and do it next year. Save $15,000 off of this year's budget. Put it over to next year. That's a potential option.
Yes, it is, but that's about all that's on the table right now, assuming that the drop dead number there for the CN rent 19,000 doesn't change. And I'll just point out that, you know, it's somewhere between 1,000 and 19,000, and I could make a very vehement case, I'm sure they would laugh at me, that it should remain 1. We haven't actually changed any of the terms of the lease. But
Are we negotiating with the right organization though? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that CN rents the rail from BC Rail because the BC Rail entity still exists. So is the lot not BC Rail as opposed to CN's? Or are they flipping a profit on a piece of their profit by retailing it to us?
that's something for Peter to answer. The lease is in fact signed with BC Rail because it's back in the day. I do know that as the registrar of West Van Little League, they have a batting cage in the railway right away at Ambleside, and they tried everything. They want it back, and West Van Little League, in the person of myself, said no, we have a lease.
And who was they?
CN,
Yeah.
but I think the same question. I think it's CN, but it's certainly valid, worth exploring, right, Peter?
Yeah, I thought that BCR had handed over all responsibility, but it's worth double checking.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, gentlemen, I don't want to beat this number up because it is what it is. So if it's the high number and ain't going to increase, that's fine. So not really. I mean, it's
Okay.
up to the two of you.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I would like to do it because it's time to fix the parking, and this is one aspect of it.
Fine, I'm supportive. Let's go on.
Fred? Okay, thanks. So I believe with that, the numbers are in front of us. And Ron, you've told us the number.
52 grand separation at 14.6 equals 3.6, and we're balanced.
Is that, you agree with that? Okay, well, I mean, I'm sure if we can get it down to a 3% number.
3. Okay, so to get down to
Visual
3,
negotiations going on.
we get down to 3. Sorry, I should have brought my calculator. I
Well, I got it
apologize.
right here. There you go. Sorry.
So, I mean, just 3 because it's a round number.
Well, you're not balanced, so you...
No, but what here is contingency. That if we're wrong on the contingency, we can draw from reserves.
Okay, so 3 it is. Right. The it's a small number.
It's a small number.
And actually, from memory, that was the lowest number in the article I wrote, I'm sure. Yes, I'm very sure.
So, for example, if the 19,000 that we're budgeting for the CN lease doesn't turn out to be 19,000, there's found money right there. There's a 0.3%, right? 0.3%, 0.6%.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Okay, so let's just cut to the chase. Can we?
Recommend 3.
There is. I apologize. I can't use that thing.
Everybody has their favorite calculator. Yes.
I'm just trying to figure out 3%, so how much we'd be short. Because there are some other options. We've got 2 salt spreaders in here, Public Works salt spreaders,
Yeah,
so we
we
could
got one
just
of them.
purchase one.
I don't want to do
And
that.
that'd be
Yeah, but why do we need new ones?
Well, we
Because the
could
other
get
ones are
by.
dead, right?
Well,
Well.
the 2 small salters are on their way out. One of them's dead completely. So we need to replace that one. The other one we can baby along for another year.
Is it? It's the one that I saw dropping a very neat line of salt down the middle of the road. Is that the dead one?
The yellow one?
I didn't see the color of it.
Yeah, that sounds like the one.
I did see it dropping a very neat triangular 6-inch
Yeah.
wide pile of
Yeah, the
salt down the
spreader
middle.
motor's going on it.
Okay, so this is your call.
Well,
I don't think anybody's going to argue with new salters.
Okay, I just.
I mean, we can work with the
Okay.
3% number and cut it down.
Fine.
Because otherwise you'll have to show draw from reserves, and I'm thinking.
3 and come back with something.
And the option is
Fine.
4 and then no draw from reserves. Or we can try and cut.
I would rather
Just
draw
fine.
from reserve if we get some contingency.
I'd rather 3 was the number than 4.
Just say 3.6.
You could say 3.6.
No, we want a round number this time.
3.
3.
It's always been round. Okay, 3. No, fair enough. And we'll staff
You
will go
can't
back
vote.
and see if we can find some savings.
But he can certainly have an opinion.
Maureen,
Or it's actually, I think what it
Motion.
would be is a draw from prior years.
Amber, 3.
We're about to get a motion. That's a very informal motion. I move
just-
that.
Recommend 3 for the general
Okay,
tax
thank you.
increase.
Would anybody care to second that? It's seconded. Any discussion?
Pamela?
No,
Yeah, no.
I'm good.
We
I
can't,
thought we were gonna get zero,
fine.
so
Okay, so we're going to call the question. All in favour and opposed? That carries. Okay, you have your number.
I do have my number, so I'll write it down, 3%.
Thank you very much for the
And I think what I would,
clean budget presentations too.
Yeah.
I would, 3%, and I'll show it as a draw from surplus. I'm still working on the fourth quarter review, but it's looking like we'll have a surplus, so we can draw from that.
Yeah,
rather
I
than
made the
saying it's
point
from
long ago
reserves.
that we have never budgeted a transfer to reserves, yet we have fairly large reserves. That means there's a lot of projects that didn't get finished. And thus, I'm very comfortable drawing from reserves because they represent unfinished projects. Now, when the day comes that we start actually budgeting a transfer to reserve, that's a different question.
So, sorry, I'm treating this more like a CSC. Peter, do we need a resolution then to just, otherwise we sort of have it, to say that council has now approved the 2018 budget? I mean, the advantage of doing that is then we can go ahead and start spending the money. I mean, that was one of the
Yeah. So on the
desires to
basis
have
of
it.
the motion, the past motion, you know what the budget,
I know the percent increase. and-
where the revenue
Yes.
number comes from. So what resolution would you like to approve the budget as amended? Just a motion in that regard.
I thought that's what you just passed.
No, we just
A
agreed to
motion-
3%.
Actually, Pam
Motion.
talks about it in her thing about starting the project.
So basically,
So it's a green light to staff. Isn't that normally?
Well, you're not
council?
asking for a resolution on the budget here,
no, this was.
but would you
just-
like one?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean,
Yeah.
they've said the 3%, but then you can say approve the 2018 budget.
As
with the
amended.
As amended with a 3% tax increase.
Yeah.
There, you just said it.
So that's, okay, so we'll take that as the motion. Would somebody care to second that? Thanks. Any discussion on that? All in favour? And opposed? That carries. So now you've got your budget as well, so
Yes, you can start.
you can
Yeah, start
spend to it.
Spending it.
Good.
And on that note, if I could sort of further to the follow-up action. So the next step after this, I would work on the 5-year plan. And following the schedule that we had, I have it here, I was going to bring to council for review at the February 21st meeting. So we're technically 1 week behind, just a chance for you to look at the 5-year review. And then first, second, and third reading. No, I'm sorry, that was on March 6th. And then first and second reading March 20th. But one of the reasons to have the budget done so quickly was so we could start spending. We've got that taken care of. And to me, there might be an advantage to defer the first and second reading to April 10th, bring the 5-year plan, and maybe have a CSC about it. We've never done that in the past, but we have a lot of information now. We started last year. We have our loan authorization bylaw where we identified the projects we wanted to do. It gives council a chance to look at them sort of further to what Nye has been saying, prioritize them, talk about what you want to do over the next 5 years, and by deferring it, we would have the tender results back as well for the water tanks, and depending if it's under budget or a little bit over budget, we could accommodate that without having to do a budget amendment.
I like it. I have achieved my goal, which is having a passed budget early.
Yes.
So we've got a passed budget now for this year, so weapons-free type of idea. Maybe that's the wrong metaphor. So I'd be in favour of deferring for all the reasons you
Yeah,
state.
and then that would give us an opportunity to have maybe a CSC. We could have it in the evening or do it at a council meeting, but staff would bring all the projects. And the other thing that I'd like to have a discussion about is we are anticipating some land sale revenue this year, some that we have to borrow, some possibly that we could just use for capital projects, and council's priorities on how they want that money spent as well, and putting it into a 5-year plan. And I think there's probably an expectation from the public as well that, we're getting some pushback now, when you're going to repair my roads, so it would be nice to have a budget that addresses that. And it also makes a nice kind of passover for a future council coming in with a sort of a more solid 5-year plan. And they're not locked into it, but it can
You
also
said
be
that
guidance
clear
for them.
template, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's no longer a plug. What do you think?
Piece on this, fully agree, and I think this is for admin and the mayor to pick the date, because as you can tell tonight, we've
Yes.
got some absence problems. And it's hard to do the full deal when half the team's not here.
And I'm conscious you're away for the next 2 meetings as well.
So would that
When we'd be
accommodate Ron's
discussing it.
attendance?
He would be here for the first and second reading
Okay.
on April
On what
10th.
day?
April 10th.
Yeah,
And we could have some discussion prior to that.
And you would
there-
not have been, with the schedule I'm looking at over Pam's shoulder here.
no, but I mean, that's fine, I mean, the key
Yeah.
piece here is done now. The second one is work that's
Yeah.
throwing the ball down the road a bit.
Yeah, sure. So do you see any particular reason not to defer it by one meeting's worth, right?
No.
In all cases.
Equivalent of 2 meetings, I
2
believe.
meetings.
Yeah.
We actually could defer it even more if we did want Councillor McLaughlin's attendance. The due date now is May 15th. I have to have an adopted bylaw by
So
May
you'll
15th.
jump-
Yeah, and we have the annual report that needs to have,
Yeah.
although the annual report's not predicated on any of this. So,
And that's June 30th. It's just something to think about. I mean, we don't really have to decide now. I just really wanted to
I think
know.
my suggestion is
I know
that-
now I don't bring a 5-year plan to the next meeting,
Well, I
so that gives
suggest
me
the
more time.
takeaway is that you, Noodle, and the mayor, and you and Peter agree on a hard date.
Mm-hmm.
Get it out there early, and
I think this is a council schedule, so we need a resolution. Or did we, is that a resolution, that schedule?
the schedule.
Well, that's just
Oh,
a
no,
work plan.
no, it's just
No.
information.
Okay, so no
I mean,
resolution
I've got the
needed.
information, and there's still, even on the April 10th meeting when we were doing, now doing first and second reading, you'd get the package ahead of time.
Yeah.
I don't anticipate just doing first and second reading. There would be final discussion on the,
Okay.
on the budget. So
We haven't
we'd
heard
still
from
have
Fred
some
on this.
input.
What do you think, Fred?
Well, there's really not much to say. I mean, Pam's arguments are so solid that
Yeah.
what's the decision? I say, sure.
Well, there's points we leapfrogged on our accelerated budget process, so
No, so
we're spending.
I've
our
achieved
budget.
what I needed to get to
Yeah.
for this new schedule, so we can get to a passed budget quicker. And now
And
we're
then
there.
staff can now, we don't have to wait. We can start implementing some of the.
Okay, good. So I take
Okay.
that as agreement. I don't know how we agree without doing a resolution, but it's just everybody's nodding. So
Yeah,
yeah.
no, it's a work in progress.
Okay.
Staff's got to pick it.
Just direction
and
to
set the time.
staff.
It's just direction staff that I won't be bringing the first and second, I won't be bringing the 5-year plan to
Thank
the
you,
next
Pam.
council meeting.
Okay, that's great. Okay, well done. Thanks, Pam. So, how much sooner did we get it done, past budget this year than last year?
I think
Full month?
it was, yeah, pretty much a month, and it was mid to end of March last year when we were
Mm-hmm.
approving the 2018 year.
That is fantastic,
And it was less painful. Thank
and it
you.
was less painful. Well, that was my ulterior motive.
Oh, it's just- right, the decisions are never less painful.
Okay, well done, Pam. Again. Okay, so we'll move on. If everybody's amenable, anybody need a break? No. Okay, so that is Clean Water Wastewater Fund verbal update. Who's doing this one?
The tender went out. We're waiting for responses, so there's not really a lot of action on the table. I have the water shortage plan to review and the SCADA communication memo to review.
Is that coming to the IC?
I hope to bring it to this IC, but it won't make it. It'll make it to the next IC, but it's on the table. Both reports will come to IC.
Fred, you're bird dogging that.
Yeah, I was just going to slip him a note soon before he leaves to find out what he wants to see on the IC agenda.
There you go.
When is that?
Next Monday.
Monday. This coming Monday. Yeah.
I'll be making the agenda up tomorrow and the next day.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, that's it.
That's
Thanks. So motion to receive that report. And second, thanks. All in favour. Opposed, carried. Did we do a motion? The recommendation was that the report be reviewed, and I think the motion that we made to approve it will cover the recommendation. So this one we're good on.
Yes.
Okay, so staff reports A3, CAO Public Correspondence re DPAs, page 25. We've read the correspondence, if not in the package before. So Peter, any salient points we should be aware of here?
I think more than anything, the intent of the report was to highlight the objectives of proceeding with the hazard assessment and the development permit area OCP amendment. In terms of perhaps what I perceived as some misconceptions or perceptions about what this was all about are points that I tried to focus on in this report. Namely that the intent of the report was not to provide individual assessments of each particular hazard, but to identify them. You know, the responsibility of council is to set the acceptable levels for risk tolerance, and that exercise is, you know, upon deeper analysis, a little bit more challenging than simply accepting the recommendations from the writer of the report. What's good for the District of North Vancouver is not necessarily what's right for Lions Bay.
Let me just interject. You're not choosing that at random. We were modelled on the framework of North Vancouver.
Sorry, what do you mean?
Yes.
We're modeled on the framework of North
We're
Vancouver?
utilising a North Vancouver framework rather than just a generic framework. So that was. I don't want anybody to be confused by the fact that you chose North Van at random.
The framework for the development permits is determined by the hazards which exist. That's what determines what our development permit areas look like, what they're all about. They're not the same as Squamishes, which have a lot of floodplain issues, or North Vans, which are principally concentrated around creek hazards and ravines and those kinds of debris flow hazards. We have additional hazards that are unique to Lions Bay. I'm speaking of the thresholds that are set, and there are considerations that we need to be careful about, that council needs to weigh carefully in terms of where those thresholds are set and what the implications and what consequences are of setting those thresholds. And staff is still working on that. Had a good conversation today with the person responsible at District North Van about the history of their development of that and their experience over the past 10 years. But there's still a little ways to go in terms of policy options that we'd like to lay out for council. And there are legal considerations that go along with those policy options. So I have tried to address in this report, I mean, it was intended originally that we would be bringing forward an amended DPA framework, but it's just not ready. So this report came forward in the absence of the rest of it to address the correspondence, which was starting to get stale. So I wanted this brought forward. And it's great that residents are engaged and bringing up concerns. These are things that everyone needs to think about. And I suspect that there will be a need to have additional conversation and discussion about the different options that council will be faced with in terms of setting appropriate policy for Lions Bay in respect of allowing new development, and how that's defined and how it's phrased.
This, what do we call it, deferment, delay, does it stop, does it further delay development in Lions Bay?
Yes. You can't really provide for new development in the circumstances where those approvals don't take into account the hazards which have been identified. You've got to have a framework for dealing with that. You've got to have a policy framework for dealing with that. And
well, we didn't before, so
no, but it's we're at the point where, in order to proceed, we need to follow best practice in terms of dealing with the hazards that exist if council is going to continue down the path towards permitting new development to take place. You can't just allow people to develop in a situation where they may not be aware of the risks associated with the hazards which have been identified, and you need to have a framework for subsequent qualified registered professionals to assess and address those risks, and to ensure that the land is suitable and safe for development in accordance with the safety thresholds and the risk tolerance thresholds that council alone can set.
Well, I think we all appreciate that. My issue is we've got a line out of the door of people who want to develop, whether it's a subdivision and develop or cottage develop. It's a short line, but it's a line. I'm hearing that those people will be told, sorry, you're going to have to come back later. Yet we've 550 houses managed to get built here in the absence of a framework. I understand different times. Is there any way that the people who are pressing to do development now can develop, whether it's with an ad hoc geotech report, using the known risks? Yes, the risks are known, but they're not quantified in terms of the acceptable risk tolerance. So, a geotech can set that. Or do we? What's different now, because we have a sort of a stymied DPA development process?
And we haven't talked about CCAs and other.
That is an outstanding issue, and I believe there's also a soils deposition issue that we also have to cover.
Yeah.
So there's 3 things outstanding, and more yet may come up. But this one could potentially. I guess what I should ask is, what's the timeline?
So I don't want to paint anything in solid concrete or poured in solid concrete.
Do you have a DPA for that?
I'm using the existing footprint of the development.
But
It's not new development. Not
Okay,
new
all right,
development.
enough joking. Come on.
Okay, in any event, there is a seminar, so to speak, coming up in a couple of weeks on this very topic of taking these kinds of hazards and how to put them into policy and
Putting numbers on them.
different options, as well as ongoing conversations that I'm having. So.
But now, why didn't our consultant know the answer? Why do we need to? Why is our consultant not telling us this? Why are you having to find it out?
Sorry, say it again.
Why do you need to go to a seminar? I mean, he knew all this stuff already.
The consultant may not be the best person to advise council on what the appropriate policy is for council. The consultant will certainly have and has provided lots of different rationales and lots of different explanations as to why certain people do it a certain way and what some of those options are. But yeah, it's something that requires further development.
So now we need a made for lines-based solution.
Yeah, I believe so. In any event, I got myself invited to that. I wasn't really supposed to be there, but I will be. I'm hoping that we can bring it to the. Sorry. So what I was looking at was March 27, 28, or 29. That's in between 2 designated council meeting dates. We have a meeting on March 20th. The next one's not until after Easter, April 3rd, I believe. However, we're expecting the tender to close on March 21st, and we're looking at the likelihood of scheduling a special meeting for that intervening week. So somewhere in the 27th, 28th, or 29th. And so my thinking was we could go with both of those at the same meeting.
So it's only about
Provide for 2 readings, schedule public hearing, advertise for it. Have the public hearing would be April 19th, and April 24th would be 3rd reading and adoption if council was comfortable with where things were at that point in time. That's just sort of a rough layout, trying to work as well with the planning consultant's holidays, which he wouldn't be there for the special meeting, but he would be for the public hearing. Anyways, those are some of the thoughts I have with respect to where we're at, and you know, trying to get to where we need to be within a reasonable time frame, but still providing for the necessary information to be brought forward, and to provide an opportunity, if necessary, I think it will be necessary, for further public input on, you know, we've already actually, you haven't seen it yet, but the bylaw has been changed in fairly substantive ways. I think addressing some of the things that have been brought up by residents. And the last part of it really is just the policy aspect of it, and where do we want to land without, you know, making the wrong step, because it's an important one.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for laying that out. Good job, and thank you for responding to the residents. My sense, and I don't mingle with our villagers
Yes, you do.
as much as, well, I don't have little kids, I don't go to the school, and, you know,
You're a mingler.
volleyball, we're fairly aggressive, so we don't talk a lot about stuff. So, so my thinking is this, that our town hall had kind of a cold shoulder reception in the community. And I think some of the residents have put pen to paper, but not all the ones that I would have liked to have seen. There are some very qualified folks that haven't come forward yet.
Well, don't we got one came today.
One came today, but I was thinking.
Obviously, it wouldn't be in the
I was
package.
thinking of Ed. Ed had a practical viewpoint on this, as I recall.
Yeah, his comments are in the report, but yeah.
So something there.
Yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
think, you know. So here's where I'm going with this one, is that in the bigger picture, to your point, Mayor Burr, is that, you know, the DPAs are, the DPA is just part of the process to get to where we want to go down the road. And I think what's missing in the broader community is the road. We kind of we're stuck on the roadblock right here. And as I was writing this down, and you know, and I thought Peter's explanation was good. And I guess in the villagers that I do see, they ask questions about this that you know, it's confusing. How does this affect me and stuff like that? And so, I mean, my thinking here is that I've used the word marketing without trying to sell something, but you know, kind of a more informative piece that goes out to our villagers about where we are with it, like DPA's 101 kind of thing, like really to the point, and why are we doing it, and what occurred, and as Peter's now just laid out a schedule, because now we've got some hard stuff that people can actually hang their hat on, and then explain what is the purpose of the DPAs and what's going to follow that and the likely timeline, so that if I'm someone that doesn't have a subdivision I understand, it's a clear path. If I am one of the people that's pent up that we've been talking about subdivision that we're interested in for, and I'm not thinking of massive development, but even small split a lot kind of thing, they're just left out in the cold. So my for discussion is an info piece, and it could be like a 3-session, 3 consecutive weeks in the village update. It's too much of a topic all at once. It's like, in my view, is if we were to split it up into 3 topics, let's call it the DPAs, why are we doing it, and here's where we're going. The second one is once we've come to this, and we've done our town halls and all the rest of that, then we're going to go to that, and that's why we're going to do that. And this is ultimately where it leads to.
Well, I think it's fair to say that Peter recognized that our first public information meeting started off with quite a bang, where a geologist started spouting forth geology stuff, and very interesting if you're into geology, but I think a lot of people were sort of a bit shell-shocked. What the heck is this guy talking about all this stuff for? Yeah, we need a DPA 101. Everything you wanted to know about DPAs, but we're afraid to ask.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, and this, I'll make this statement, and you know, Mayor Burr, I love reading your articles, but I'm not sure that you're the one to write this one. And I think, well, it's an administrative function.
You know that everything you were afraid to ask about DPS, that's the title of my
I mean,
piece.
okay, because I mean, really, we want to, I mean, you get, you know, all sorts of emails, and unfortunately, many of us are copied on them. So I'm actually thinking that this is a Peter profile thing, and my recommendation for discussion is that if Peter wants to noodle it, break what I've talked about into 3 easy bite chunks, 3 consecutive updates, and it accomplishes 2 things. One, enhances his profile. If there's feedback, it goes where it should go, and that, you know, we're doing the right thing in informing our villagers. And it leads into the ultimate hard dates that he's talking about. I'll be quiet.
Fred?
Yeah, I got lots of green ink here, and I won't go over it all, because some of it's already been dealt with. I think Ron's onto something here, and I think there are some areas that are completely confusing to people. For example, should we have the same policy for somebody doing a big subdivision versus somebody just wanting to do a little minor change on the lot, but they're in one of the unfortunate areas? So are they going to be stuck with a $5,000 to $10,000 geoscientist bill?
To change the deck.
Well, yeah, but if we look at the value of the property and say 5 to 10 is no big deal on that, it isn't any big deal if you're going to flip the property. But if a homeowner just wants to change things on their property, 5 to 10 grand on top of the renovation is huge. I mean, it could be a make or break for them. So I'm sympathetic with that, and that leads me to the other point I think we need to clarify, is that when we look at the issue as far as the risk assessment for the municipality, I think, if I can refer to Peter Rigglesworth's comment, as Peter quoted here, our Peter, about no one is under any illusions about the hazards of our community. Well, I like to think of them as risks, not necessarily hazards until they happen. But I think when somebody buys a piece of property, they must be well informed about the risks that they're taking in buying that piece of property. And I think something about that in our policy should be front and center. And I think all the residents need to understand that. And whether we say that you have to hire a geoscientist to get your building permit for this or not is sort of one way or the other. But I think maybe it should be the policy of this council that at the very least they are fully informed and educated about the risks they're taking on, and they do exist. And I'm sympathetic to that because, you know, our place is in one of the hazard risk zones, being on Alberta Creek. And if we had to do a renovation to our property with the conceivable possibility of an overtopping of the channel, and I appreciate the emphasis on conceivable, because it was overbuilt in many people's perspective for the debris flow that came through. And in the mid-'80s, when the debris flow came through, it scoured our property, which was both sides of the creek, but left our house untouched. Now you've got this monstrously big concrete containment thing in here with about a 30% grade on it. I really don't feel like we're at much risk. And add to that, if we're looking at a 1 in 2,400 year risk cycle, well, we had it in 1986. Maybe we're past and we're good for another 2,000 years. I don't know. It's all too vague, and there's all too much theory to all this, and we don't really have hard numbers. And because we can't say that you're taking an extreme risk if you build something or remove a tree or do whatever, and it's going to cost you 10 grand to have it checked out, I'm a little gun shy of putting that to the public, because I don't think we have enough evidence to say that it's really that necessary. So I'm not asking for a conclusion here, but I think this is all something that should be thrown into the mix of what we're thinking about when we discuss this. And I'll leave the other greening for another time.
Peter, can you are you nodding your head and saying, yeah, all those comments will be addressed when we actually approve numbers?
I didn't think I was nodding my head.
No, I'm saying when you do nod your head.
We're not enough.
I think that there's a couple of points that Councillor Bing has touched on, which are very important. The most important, I think, of which is communication of the risk. Municipalities and regional districts have a duty to warn under Section 25 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. That is a serious obligation. Our dilemma at the moment is we have an unquantified risk, and until it's quantified, we don't really know how tangible that risk is. We know that based upon the assessment that's been done, that we're talking about high consequence if an event were to happen for various of the different hazards that were identified. But there's much less certainty in terms of the likelihood of the event taking place. So there are avenues to help us get to a place where we have some greater certainty, which are being pursued. But in the interim, yes, there is a definite need to ensure that there is clear understanding and communication of the hazards and the risks, and then, you know, at some point, council's got to say, here's the threshold that we're comfortable with in terms of saying, yes, there are risks. Yes, we live with them every day. We get in our cars and drive wherever we're going, and we have a 1 in 10,000 chance of getting killed each year that we drive our cars. That's sort of a basic, rough number. So is that a level that people are comfortable with when they go to their homes? Or is a home a place of refuge where you shouldn't have to think about being subject to those kind of risks? There's arguments both ways. There's the aspect of development, whether it's here, whether it's in North Vancouver or other places, that has taken place over the years when people didn't know any better about where they built. Doesn't mean that in this day and age you should allow them to build in those places or rebuild in those places. And doing so, if there's a risk that's known, which is tangible and present, then you know, there are legal considerations to take into account. And those are the kinds of things that I want to make sure that we have properly researched and laid out for council, so that you're making educated decisions about things like risk tolerance and
Event horizons.
yeah. And
Well, I don't think anybody
I think
here
that-
doubts the need for
Yeah.
the framework.
And
So,
I think that the idea of a series of information pieces is a good one.
So that's where I was going. I think
And-
we may be the only ones who appreciate it today,
Mhm.
because I think it's not misinformation, it's misunderstanding. So I would very much support a three thing, and a very well, carefully choreographed, thought through public information session as well. So, and I agree, I think we probably need a second one. We'll probably have the same people, or a subset of them.
Yeah, this timeline didn't account for a second one, but that's I'm not saying no, we shouldn't. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It's a
Well,
point.
you're gonna know off what your feedback is off your marketing
so-
pieces.
yeah.
If you get 10 emails a crack, you got a problem.
So yeah, I would think, so just as Ron suggests, I think a series of 3. Now the reach of the email is pretty good, but I think we can even do some more, you know, in the post office, here's a link to the website, promote it in all the various channels that we have. And it's DPA's 101, what's it going to mean for Lions Bay? And written by Peter, yeah. In his usual succinct, colloquial, non-official.
Well, you get to double up and do the warm-up act for them with your thing and say, here's why it's
Yeah.
important to look at this. And
Read below for the real skinny,
yeah,
to use a term that we hear around the council table.
there you go. Anyhow,
Okay, good suggestion. Thanks for that. So shall we leave it there? I don't believe we have a motion to receive the report yet, so I'll ask for one of those and a second. Any further discussion? All in favour? Opposed? That carries. Thanks, Peter. Good stuff. Now, the feedback that we got today, which was copied to council, that will all form part of the discussion as it comes along, right?
Yeah, we'll have that in the next agenda as
Back,
correspondence.
if I may, so I think in rerouting some of these, I know Heather got a thank you from me when I sent it in, so that's she got answered.
Yeah.
Ian and Peter got theirs this morning.
Yeah.
Jennifer, I don't remember.
Well, this is up to you to respond, right? Your feedback, you're Mr. Feedback. So you do and will.
Okay, so if we
as
can
they
ask
come
you
in.
to do that for the 4, now 5 that I think are in.
Because, correct me if I'm wrong, most of these council was not aware of because they came to feedback, the feedback email address.
Well, actually, some of these came directly to council, and I
forwarded,
I
yeah.
only became aware of
You were
them
the one
because
that
you
were
forwarded them to
yeah,
me.
Yeah.
For their
So,
personals.
yeah, they were sent directly to you guys.
Yeah, so there is that aspect of it. So let's just keep, no,
Post-cleaning.
you tracked that, and so the one that came today, you got to before I did, so you have that.
Yeah.
What? Okay.
Okay.
Somebody throwing the voice.
No, the door did open. I thought it was another member of the public. Come to see what we're doing.
We don't have many of those.
No, exactly. Okay, so that report's been received. So we have one more report, and I'm not going to belabor it. It's me on page 35. So just for your information, I presented this report to Squamish Council this afternoon at 3 o'clock. As a result of quite a few questions, discussion after the report, just about every councillor there that had something to say or ask. They passed a motion endorsing this and asking for a pilot of average speed over distance at Lions Bay. And so I will amend the thing accordingly. Yeah, Peter?
So at Lions Bay or from Horseshoe Bay to Squamish?
No, at Lions Bay, exactly as called for here, as a pilot. And they would very much like to see it implemented in their neck of the woods. But, you know, it has to be done slowly. The reason you ask for a pilot is because people need to see that it works. It was quite interesting. They did one in Scotland on the A9, and there was quite a bit of resistance. And I've outlined on the FAQ sections, starting on page 45 of the package. These are all the things that people say. And I've drawn many of these from various places' websites. The Australian website, you know, a lot of these things, it's not going to work, people are going to overtake. The Scottish website had all kinds of objections. The second time they did it, on the A37 in Scotland, it was welcomed with open arms because it works. People drive the speed limit with all the associated benefits. And I'll just point out in Lions Bay there's multiple benefits, 3 real ones. The first is a reduction in accidents, the second is a reduction in noise, and the third is a reduction in closures, which are related to accidents, obviously, but it's more an economic thing. And so that's what it is. So the only thing that you haven't really seen before is the FAQs. I've sort of tried to distill stuff that I've heard and that I've seen on websites. The only other thing was, perhaps I'll just point out those 3 maps that you see. I found a way to plot Modi stats on a Google map. I won't bore you with the fairly circuitous route involved. I was told it couldn't be done, so that was the first mistake they made.
Couldn't or shouldn't?
Yeah. So, Shauna, could you just show us those maps? Just, I had Shauna cue them up for us. And this is pretty much the whole story. Now, what am I doing? I'm not pressing.
Yeah.
While we're waiting, when would the construction here and in the upstairs start now?
Oh.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
maps
sorry,
of
I
this.
was fairly soon.
This
I
button
mean,
here.
some of the work's gonna be done by Public Works, and for
It's a
after the meeting, I have some
tenury thing?
pictures
I don't know.
and tables, and I had a few questions to ask after the meeting.
Yeah, my
Okay.
workload has just gone through the roof, so I'd like to meet
Yeah.
with Pam
Yeah,
tomorrow
exactly.
and start identifying things I need to move on, like the
Yeah.
paving for the parking lot and
I like the sound of it. So, these are property damage only accidents between the Bend at Horseshoe Bay and Squamish. The size of the triangle represents either 1 or 2, 3 or 4, or 5 or 6 incidents. That's as far as the incidents go. And zooming out from Lions Bay, you see there's a massive concentration right at Lions Bay. Can we have the next one, Shauna? These are injury accidents, very similar pattern. The size of the icons means the same thing. So I'll just point out, between Horseshoe Bay and Squamish, you see there's long stretches of highway with no incidents. This is from January 10 to December 16, so the new highway, the post-construction highway. Previous stats had been before the construction as well, and there was a different highway. So again, you'll see that the accidents are concentrated at Lions Bay. There's gaps I put a scale in there so you can get sort of a rough sense of what we're talking about. But around Lions Bay, there are a disproportionate amount of accidents. And the last one, please, Shauna. And these are the ones that are really important. These are fatalities. So 11 fatalities in the stretch, 7 of them at Lions Bay. And there they are. So the logic is very simple. And so that's the final thing that I'll just point out, and that is, to get it absolutely right, that's the slide number 10 of my presentation on page 39. The high accident rates show that the 85th percentile speed, that's the speed that most people are driving, that they feel comfortable with, is wrong. They are wrong to be driving at that speed. They should not feel comfortable at that speed, and the accidents prove it. Therefore, we have to get the 85th percentile speed down. So the 85th percentile speed through Lions Bay is about 100. The speed limit is irrelevant. The speed limit is 60 or 70, depending, but that's irrelevant. People feel comfortable driving at 100. That's too fast. How do we get them to slow down? Average speed over distance technology. It's a similar problem faced by other jurisdictions, and that's how they do it. Enforcement is too spotty. Signs don't work, as proven. People doing 100, not 60. And that's my report.
Received.
Thank you. I have a motion to receive and a second. Any further discussion?
One question I got. You just said that what we post on the speed is really irrelevant, so my question's probably irrelevant too. But I was just coming into town today, and I noticed we go to the 90 to the 70 to the 60, and the 70 to the 60 is such a short gap, somebody's not really adjusted yet. So maybe it'd be easier just to get rid of the 70 sign and put everybody at 60, and then it's more of a drastic change, and people would have to pay more attention. And I'm noticing that, like, I found a car, I'll actually go on cruise control down to 30K. Anyhow, I set it at 60 as we get in there, and I don't get tailgated as much as I used to. Maybe because we've got a bigger car and they don't try it. But so I was just kind of wondering, maybe if there's a bigger differential in the regular speed versus in village speed, if it would be taken more noticeably, and then backed up with the ASOD.
Yeah, we just don't have the data to say why. To be honest, I find the speed differentials less than they were before. I will acknowledge that I probably don't do 60 into Lions Bay, but I do 70 because 70 is about right. Anything more than that with our cambers and our sight lines and our bend radiuses and stuff is probably not quite right, proven by the accidents. Yeah, they did re-stagger them. The staggering was all wrong. You weren't given adequate warning from 90 to 70 to 60. So what Modi is going to do, or is still seeking approval for, as I mentioned last meeting, is to remove the 60. Why? Because the feeling is that 70 might present a more believable limit that few people might adhere to better than they adhere to 60. I'll also just say that, as you know, the rationale behind the vegetative median was that it would provide some sort of visual cue to slow down, because people would think that they're driving through the village. Didn't work. What does seem to be working is the concrete barriers. Our fire department reports that people are noticeably slower through that new 1.4 kilometer section. the visual cue is such that people actually now they're slowing down.
Well, especially when you see the tire marks on the concrete.
They've been in the short time that the barrier's been up, it has been a hit.
Yep.
But we always expected that.
Yep.
Well, maybe when they take the 60 down, they should replace it with a skull and crossbones
Yeah.
with an arrow at the head.
Well, I did ask if we could change the average. What's the thing called? The MUC CD, the Manual of Uniform Traffic Signs insisted on by public works managers everywhere. What's the acronym?
The MUTC.
Thank you. The new one is added. We really, really, really mean it, but they wouldn't do it.
Yeah, this means you, bucko.
Okay, so the report's been received, and we'll move on.
I have no council report.
Okay, and oh no, that wasn't closed. So now we have a few bylaws to adopt. Is that right, Pam?
Correct.
They're all adoptions because I don't want to get glared at by getting it wrong. Yeah, all adoptions. Okay, so let's go through these one by one. So I'll take a motion that the Water Rates and Regulations Bylaw number 2 of 1971 Amendment Bylaw number 538 of 2018 be adopted. Can I have a motion? Thanks. And a second. Any discussion on that? All in favour? Opposed? And that carries. I would need a motion that the Sewer User Rates Bylaw number 122 of 1984 Amendment Bylaw number 539 of 2018 be adopted. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favour? Opposed? That carries. And next, that the Garbage and Recycling Collection Bylaw number 455 of 2013 Amendment Bylaw number 540 of 2018 be adopted. I have a motion and a second. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favour? Opposed? That carries. And finally, that the Secondary Suite Surcharge Bylaw number 513. Peter, did I not see some amendments? Let's just not go too fast on this one. 63?
Yeah.
Just, what are we looking at there, Peter?
So, been any changes since last?
There's some red line and strikeout here.
What page are you on?
63, yeah.
That was.
That's going to have
That
been
was in accordance with the recommended. Hang on, wait a second.
I believe, because we did 3 readings the first time. So what are we looking? What is that? Is that
the change we agreed to before we did
before we did the readings?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah, that's
I
what
think
it
that's
was.
what I'm asking. So it just shows here.
Yeah.
So you'll just
Yeah.
clean that up
Yeah.
for the in the final version. But
Yeah.
that preceded first, second, and third reading.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
change. Okay, good. Okay, so let's just go
Thanks
back.
for that, Pam. I was struggling with that. How did we do that?
Yeah. Okay, so this is now a vote to adopt. So can I have a motion? I'll start again. Motion for the Secondary Suite Surcharge Bylaw number 513 of 2017 Amendment Bylaw number 536 of 2018 be adopted. I see a motion and a second. Thanks. Any discussion? All in favour? Opposed? That carries. I don't know if I needed to ask for the motion again, but just to get it clean. So that's good. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Okay, and then moving on to correspondence. Ron, this seems to be your specialty.
It
So.
just gives you a break, so you want to gather strength. UBCM meeting notice, it's the end of the month. No response.
Can I just interject? One of the Squamish Council members is on the UBCM exec and suggests that we get the average speed of distance presentation on the UBCM agenda. Same for LM Lower Mainland, MGA, yeah, of which she is the chair, and she asked that we get on the agenda for that. So,
Good idea.
Okay.
good, thank you.
MPIC is G2, and it's a municipal workshop, and it's an invitation, which is subsequent, so no response on that one.
Right.
Which is then followed by a request for sponsorship of the same topic. So no response on that one. Sea to Sky Highway, I think Mayor Bree, you've already done this one. So no response. That's page 5, I'm sure, yes. Well, you can't say thank you for thank you, so we're done. And then R2, which is Ms. Gardy, and how can we editorialize in brief? The letter raises the point of anchorage at Kelvin Grove, all too familiar to council. And I believe, if memory serves, Peter, you responded to her already. So we are no response on that one.
Well, that response needs to come into next meeting's correspondence package, right,
Yep.
Peter?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and we are done.
Okay, thanks. So motion to receive correspondence and a second. Any further discussion? All in favour? Opposed? That carries. There's no new business, so we'll go to public questions and comments.
Well, I had a few comments, because a lot of things have been very well covered in the discussion. I have questions in relation to development permits, the EPA process. The assumption seems to be that we need to have development, and I probably would go along with that. But if a very careful analysis was to show that it's not a very good exercise, then, as Ron points out, the first report would be the only one that would be needed. Next and second and third one would not be needed. Now, I say that because I seem to think that development is going to give you a one-shot boost on the tax base of the village, more or less, a one-shot boost. Now, what is the trajectory for the increase in the cost of operating this village? There's an inflationary cost which is going to overtake that one-shot boost in a certain number of years. And then what you have to do is look for something else to develop. And I would wonder where we are with, say, land outside of village boundaries. But that puts on a trajectory where I think you will find that you are infringing on what it is that makes Lions Bay unique. And that may be the slippery slope that you're on right now. The other point about development permits and developments and the cost of doing things in Lions Bay is, does it make any sense for council to even be considering any part that Lions Bay can play in the whole question of affordable housing? Maybe it's not possible for Lions Bay to enter into that kind of discussions in the Metro Vancouver area. There was something else. Oh yes, there is the matter of due diligence with regard to development. And that, I think, was covered in discussion. Fred brought it up. The due diligence so that people, so that people who come here are aware of risks that they may be running. There is the legal aspect that if the council ignores that angle, then it may become, maybe it should be liable. What was in the papers not long ago was something that, well, bothers me to very little, and that is the question of radon. There was a piece in the North Shore News about radon, and I know the kind of work that they're doing at SFU on radon that can accumulate in relatively unventilated basements, for example. Now, is anything being done in Lions Bay about assessing radon concentration? Now, the North Shore as a whole is more radioactive than many places, not just from radon, but from a variety of sources. So
Well, you're the guy to ask this question. Radon originates from granitic materials, is that right?
it originates from the disintegration, or radioactive disintegration of uranium in granitic material. Yes, so
And we don't have any granite here.
we have lots of granite here.
Not according to the geology report we just received.
Well, where's the high radiation? Maybe it's coming from potassium. But in any case, there is a study going on all across the North Shore from North Vancouver to Squamish.
No, we've seen that. We had a correspondence or a delegation. Peter, can you remember?
Delegation?
We,
I don't think
no, it
so.
wasn't a delegation, but it was. We just saw radon coming across the
Yeah,
radar.
the problem with radon is that it is a radioactive decay process that produces alpha particles. And alpha particles are particularly damaging to the human body. Other kinds of radioactivity.
Yeah, no, I remember we saw this, and I remember commenting that when I lived in Georgia, which is very granitic, we had to get radon tested every
Florida
year.
is very high, radon. But it's, the question is there a responsibility to try and find out somehow if radon is a risk or if it isn't? Now, the level in the United States is half the tolerable level, which is always a very questionable number, is half as high in terms of becquerels in the US as it is in Canada. But it is a minor problem in a sense, but maybe not. We don't know.
That's
We don't
easy enough
know.
to check. In fact, somebody needs to volunteer to get a radon test done in the
Well,
basement.
I have done that already.
And what was the answer?
I don't know yet. I'm packing up the kit on Friday.
Oh, okay. Well, I'd be very interested to hear what that is.
And I hope a few more people will, because, well, my house is so old, it's drafty.
Yeah, so the
It's
radon
well
blows
built.
away very quickly.
It's-
Just one other
But
comment.
the new houses, before I leave it, new houses might have to take into consideration the costs of making the basement impervious to radon.
That's how they do it, yeah.
And that impacts your building code, I suspect, and that impacts affordability of houses and the costs of houses.
Is there anything on radon in the new building code?
Probably not.
Probably not. Just two comments actually, Louis. You said that property tax was a one-time thing.
Well,
development,
No, the
was-
development, the increase in the tax base of the village would be more or less a one-time shot to boost the tax base. But at the same time,
But they pay every year from now on into eternity.
but
It's also the
The-
school.
the cost of servicing the village is inflationary. And at some point, the inflation, I would think, I haven't done the math all that carefully, but I would think that the increased cost of running the village is going to overtake the benefits that you get from having a slightly bigger tax base.
Never. How could it? You just got more people to pay the bills.
There's more, but if the bills are increasing at an increasing rate,
Well, I mean, if you're talking about water connection, for example, they pay it. They pay for their water. So, no. That's the whole reason you increase your tax base.
well, but what you see happening in North Vancouver is that North Vancouver is fast becoming an unlivable space. It's becoming ghetto, in my opinion. You try to travel through North Van and even in West Van, the traffic problem is getting to be so serious because there's so many people, so many high rises.
Okay, well, that brings me very neatly to my final point, and that is we have zoning in Lions Bay. So we're not going to, we don't have a ghetto zone, so you don't have to worry about that. But
Well,
the due diligence that you suggest we need, which of course, that's called zoning. And if somebody wants to rezone, they have to come before council.
Which is also the answer for this one, which is affordable housing in the school.
Precisely. Okay, so we'll leave it at that. Thanks for those comments, Louis. And with that, we will ask for a motion to close the meeting under 91AFK and 92B. Seeing no motion, the motion. Second. All in favour, opposed, carried. Okay, so thanks for that.
That woke everybody up.
Well, thank you. So we're resuming the meeting at 3 minutes to 10. One item to report out that Jamie Cunliffe has been added to the Memorial Committee.
Fine. That's fine.
And with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting. And a second. All in favour, opposed, carried. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.